Hi guys, welcome back to Black Coffee Builds. My name is Henry. Today we'll be building this snazzy little bookshelf because, well, I've got a lot of books and I'm running out of places to store them. So let's not waste any more time and start building. How about that new logo and animation? Pretty cool, eh? Anyway, we're going to start this bookshelf the same way we do most projects, by ripping some 3/4 inch plywood down to size. To get the most efficient use out of the plywood, my shelves are going to be 11.5 inches deep. This width allowed me to get 4 pieces out of a standard 4x8 sheet, and that accounts for the blade kerf as well. This bookshelf has 13 total pieces. 5 are the longer shelf pieces, and 8 are the side support pieces. The top and bottom shelf pieces are 3.5 feet long, and the middle 3 pieces are 4 feet long. The 8 side pieces are 11.5 inches long. For those of you keeping track, this means that each side piece is a perfect square, which makes things a little bit easier. I decided to challenge myself to use slightly more complex joinery for this project, so we won't be using any fasteners, except for 1 screw for each of the 2 legs. This piece is instead going to be held together by a combination of tongue and groove joints, rabbet joints, and wood glue. I don't have a dado blade, so we're going to make the tongue and grooves the old-fashioned way. Or is it tongues and grooves? To make the rabbet joints, I'm using a rabbet bit I bought from my router. I'd recommend playing with the depth of the bit on some scrap wood to make sure you don't end up with any overhanging material. Start shallow and slowly increase the depth until you're in the sweet spot. The correct depth should be half the thickness of the material you're using. So since I'm using 3/4 inch thickness plywood, my router should be set to 3/8 of an inch deep. Now it's time for everyone's favorite part, sanding and gluing. Like everyone says, you can never have enough clamps, and I certainly don't, so I glued the pieces up in chunks, basically adding 1 shelf section each time. I don't know how many times I have to say it, but these woodpecker square clamps are your best friend. You just don't know it yet. Even though it's not strictly necessary for this project, I decided to add a couple legs for support and aesthetics. I didn't want any visible screws, so here I am marking out where I'm going to bore out a bit of material so that I can hide the screws with dowels. I decided to paint these shelves a fun color, but I wanted a natural tone edge veneer, so I'm going to use these strips of red oak that were left over from when I made my miter saw station tabletop trim. They were too wide, but I ripped them down to 3/4 of an inch to match the plywood. After cutting the strips to the correct length, I glued them onto the edge. Painter's tape functions great as a clamp for this application. After the glue dried, I sanded the veneer down. The goal is for the band to be flush with the edge so that it doesn't get caught on objects and become detached. The paint I used is a matte Behr Marquee, and the color is called Admiral Blue, which can be found at Home Depot. You might be wondering why I didn't paint the shelves before adding the veneer, and I don't have a great answer for that. If I made this again, I might try that, but I think regardless of which way you do it, you'll need to sand paint off the veneer or touch up scuffed paint where the veneer meets the shelf, or both. I applied a few coats of satin poly to the veneer for protection and to make the grain pop out. Now it's time to make the legs. For the legs I'm using some 2x2 red oak, and I'm going to make them the same way as I did on the changing station from the previous video. But this time I ran the taper from the top to the bottom instead of starting halfway down. I used my T-square to demarcate the limits of the taper, and then used my Rockler tapering jig to hold the leg down while I cut the taper. Then I found the center of the leg and drilled a pilot hole for a screw to follow. After sanding and a few coats of poly, we can attach the legs to the shelf. I cut some half-inch diameter dowels to plug the holes after screwing the legs in place. After allowing the glue to dry, I cut the dowels flush to the shelf with a Japanese pull saw. This did scuff the paint, but it was easy enough to fix. Let me know in the comments if you can think of an easy way to avoid this in the future. Finally, I added a few dabs of poly to the dowel. I considered just painting over them, but I think this looks pretty cool. If I change my mind, I can just paint over it later. And with that, this bookshelf is done. I think it turned out nicely, and I'll probably make more in this style down the road. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you found this useful and can make something similar in your own home. As always, links to the materials I used can be found down below. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, and if you want to see more content like this, consider subscribing. I'll see you guys in the next project right here on Black Coffee Builds.